Then at one point, they talked to you about being a KGB undercover spy overseas.
Yeah. See, this sort of was introduced slowly just by the stuff that Herman and I were talking about. You know, we would meet once every 2 weeks and then once every week. And he would just talk about what it would be like to be an agent in quote unquote enemy territory. And so there was never any direct, open communication, but, you read between the lines. He had me do things that indicate that the espionage was the direction. For instance, he would go and show me a building and tell me, find out what the people who are in there doing. He would also one time give me a name and an address of a married couple and told me go contact them and find out something about their cousin who lives in West Germany. So that kind of stuff. And he would give me West German literature to read, which was interesting because that was a no-no. That was totally forbidden in East Germany. And we just talked about life, and he got to know me. His responsibility was to figure out whether I had what it takes. And they were looking for a whole bunch of character traits that were already present to even then go to the point where they actually made me an offer. It took a year and a half for a high-level individual, I believe that was the head of the KGB in East Germany, when he asked me point blank, so are you in or not? And I wasn't prepared for that. It was a meeting. Nobody told me what the meeting was all about. So we were talking a little bit. The guy spoke nothing but Russian. I understood enough Russian, but I also got some stuff translated. And all of a sudden, after like 15 minutes, he abruptly asked that question. And I wasn't prepared for that. And I gave all kinds of excuses why I wouldn't answer the question. I said, I'm not trained. He said, don't worry about it. We'll train you. But we need people that are decisive. So I need your answer by tomorrow noon. That was a sleepless night, sir, because I had a phenomenal career ahead of me in Jena. I was by far the best performer in my group of about 65 students. I had received a national scholarship that was limited to exactly 100 concurrent holders. Think about this. I mean, I was a superstar, and I was on my way to become a tenured professor. And I liked basketball. My basketball team had become sort of the substitute for my parents, with whom I never had a really close relationship. And the one thing I didn't have was a steady girlfriend at the time. So there were two things that were pulling me back, where I would say, no, I don't want to go. If the third one had been there, I would have said no. And now the people asked the question, could I have said no at that point? Absolutely. You don't force somebody into that kind of service. That doesn't work. The first chance they get, they'll defect. So it was like 51-49, and I said yes. I had no idea what I was saying yes to, because I knew as much as Americans nowadays know about espionage, which is nothing. They get it from James Bond and the Americans, and none of that has any relationship with reality.
Okay, so you go ahead and join the KGB.
Yes.
And then in 1975, you got sent to Moscow for training.
Yes, and people ask me, well, did I learn Russian? I didn't go to Moscow to learn Russian. I learned English in Moscow, because in East Germany, the KGB didn't have native American speakers who spoke the American dialect of English. So I worked with a tutor there, whom I met once a week, a lady, and then I got the honor. So in those days, it was a great honor to work with two highly regarded Americans who were at one point part of the Rosenberg spy ring. They were Lana and Morris Cohen.
Well, what's interesting is that same year, 1975, when you got sent to Moscow, that was the same year that Vladimir Putin actually joined the KGB himself.
Okay. He's a bit younger than me, but I'm better looking.
Right. Well, and eventually Putin was actually stationed in East Germany himself, right?
Well, that is correct. And so people somehow ascribe Vladimir Putin's rise to power to what he learned in the KGB. And I have to, the only thing that there's two things that helped him based on his KGB background. The network that he built, he was a great networker. And you know, if you work for the KGB, you learn how to lie. But he was not, he was a mediocre agent. Think about it. You think they sent the best agent to a friendly country? He was in East Germany. He was a liaison. He was a bureaucrat. You know, he was a good organizer. That's another. That's one thing that really helped him get to power. His organization and skills. And at the time when he rose, Russia was a huge mess. You probably know this. The Soviet Union that was Russia already, and Yeltsin did a lousy job running the country.
Okay, so then in 1977, the KGB sent you to Canada so you could start kind of getting to the whole North American culture, I guess?
You sort of, yeah. 3 months. Strangely enough, I spent most of that time in Montreal. You know, that was not necessarily, giving me a picture of what the United States might look like. It would have been more like Toronto, but there were some issues anyway. 3 months. I certainly, one thing that it did for me was it took the sting out of going to the United States cold and being overwhelmed by the richness of everything, right? So I got used to it. You know, Montreal was a wealthy city then, and it is now. And the difference between East Germany, even more so between the Soviet Union and Canada, were huge.
Okay, and then in 1978, the KGB decided to send you to the United States as a sleeper agent.
Yes, sir. That was in the fall of '78.
Okay, and I guess you were given the alias Jack Philip Barsky.
That's not
which
an
I
alias.
guess was a
we stole the identity of a young man by the name of Jack Philip Barsky, who passed away at the age of 11. And so in those days, it was really easy to obtain birth certificates, death certificates, just for the asking and the fee you have to pay. You didn't have to give a reason why you want this. You didn't have to give a identification. You just got it, okay? And so and one of those diplomats, agents, KGB agents on a diplomatic cover, would wander around in cemeteries, and they found this gravestone that said Jack Philip Barsky, and they got that birth certificate, and that was an original, not forged document.
right, and I guess you were like part of the third wave of KGB agents that were
Yes.
sent into the United States.
Yes, you're very well informed. They, based on notes that were smuggled out of the KGB archives, there were 3 waves, and quite frankly, all 3 waves didn't result in much. There was a mythology about us illegals. One of the reasons was, this is the hardest job to do. Okay, no doubt. You're all by yourself and you pretend to be somebody else. And I change cultures and languages. So this is a really hard job. And I don't believe any other intelligence service worked with illegals the same way the Soviets did.
Right. I mean, you were basically given, I think, $6,000.
No, I was given,
And-
no. In Moscow, I got $10,000.
$10,000.
But I used about $4,000 for the travel because there was not, you didn't get on a plane and fly to New York, right? No, I went to Belgrade, Vienna, Rome, Mexico City, Chicago, New York. So that cost a little money and time. It was altogether was 3 weeks.
Right. So then you were left with $6,000 and an American birth certificate, and you were expected to basically get into America and establish yourself with this new identity.
Right. And that was task number one for the, that was the foundation. I needed 2 documents to be able to live and operate, work in the United States, which was a driver's license for ID and a social security card so I could get a job. And all of these, and the whole idea was that nothing is forged, right? If you have bona fide documents, you can get entry into any place, really. Even a background check would come up with nothing. So that was the whole idea, to make us as genuine as possible.
Right. And, years later, you have the TV show, The Americans, where you have these 2 Russian KGB agents, a couple actually, that were doing pretty much what you were doing back then.
Yes. One major difference, they were supposedly selected when they were young and put together. That didn't happen. I know this based on interviews that were given by high-level ex-KGB officers that operated in the Directorate S, which is illegals. They were looking at people when they, at roughly my age, in their early 20s, because we were already formed but not fully formed. But you don't know when you work with a child how that child will eventually develop. So that's wrong. The other thing that's wrong is Russians cannot get rid of their accent. You've been in this country for many years. You still have a bit of an accent. You're Ukrainian. That's very similar. So they recruited Germans, and most likely, and that's a guess, folks from the Baltic republics, because our speech instruments are anatomically similar to English and American.